What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I want to take a look at a fight that took place November 22nd, 1996, and a follow-up rematch April 18th, 1997. Now, it was between two up-and-coming young men. Poison Jr. Jones was a Brooklyn native. He was a two-time New York Golden Gloves champion. And he was up against an up-and-coming Mexican fighter who most observers was comparing to Julio Cesar Chavez. He was undefeated. He was from Mexico City, Mexico. And he would be the owner of the WBA Super Bantamweight Championship belt. Now, Junior Jones would be a former WBA Bantamweight champion, and he would lose his title to John Michael Johnson. Now, what's ironic about that was Junior Jones' 33rd professional fight. But in his third professional fight, he would defeat John Michael Johnson. So somewhere along the line, either Jones got distracted or John Michael Johnson got better. Be that as it may, these two men, Junior Jones and Marcos Antonio Barrera, would be getting it on, and the stage would be set. November 22nd, 1996. Let's take a look at Junior Jones and see how he got where he did to get that shot with Marcos Antonio Barrera. Now, he was born December 19th, 1970 in Brooklyn, New York. He stood 5 foot 8 inches and he had a 71-inch reach. He was a bantamweight, super bantamweight, featherweight, and super featherweight fighter. He had total bouts of 56, 50 wins, 28 knockouts, and 6 losses. Like I said, he was a two-time New York Golden Gloves champion. Now, he would win the WBA Bantamweight Championship strap October 23rd, 1993 over Jorge Julio in Atlantic City. I was at that fight. He would defeat WBA Super Bantamweight champion Marcos Antonio Barrera. Now, the only reason why Barrera had lost that fight is because his cornerman came into the ring and interrupted the match, so he disqualified Marcos Antonio Barrera, which is what you're supposed to do. A chief second or any member of that team cannot stand on the apron in the middle of a match. So he had lost his title to Poison Jr. Jones. Marcos Antonio Barrera was going around and stating that Jones didn't defeat him, he didn't deserve the title. So Jones said, I want a rematch. I want to prove to everyone that I'm a better fighter. So they would have a rematch April 18th, 1997. So to continue looking into Jones's career, Jones was TKO'd December 19th, 1997, Madison Square Garden on the undercard of Kevin Kelly and Nassim Hamed. They call him the Prince. And I was at that fight, 5th row. And I was very shocked when Junior Jones got tagged by Kenny McKinley. And he jumped in and stopped the match. Jones could no longer defend himself. Kenny McKinley had a rough road coming out of the 1988 Olympic team. But he would be involved, ironically, with the opponent of Junior Jones in this conversation, Marcos Antonio Barrera, in the first After Dark HBO special. It's one of the greatest fights of all times. I had the pleasure of being at that fight between Marcos Antonio Barrera and Kenny McKinley. Fascinating fight these two young men had. So Junior Jones thought that he could defeat Marcos Antonio Barrera. He felt it in his bones. And he turned out to be correct in the second fight. The first fight, it was a disqualification. The second fight, there was no question. Marcos Antonio Barrera was dropped. Jones was the victor. And he would get an opportunity to continue with his career. Now, Kenny McKinney was a gold medalist who had some problems with alcohol. And giving credit to Roy Jones, who was somewhat of a captain of that 88 Olympic team, had gotten all the teammates together and said, we got to help Kenny McKinley, and they did, and that's when Kenny McKinley had that last opportunity with Junior Jones. And that knockout was redemption for all the demons that was inside Kenny McKinley. And I was there to witness it, and it was a grateful moment for Kenny McKinley. Now, Junior Jones was stopped September 12th, 1998 in the 4th round for the WBC Super Bantamweight Championship strap. On April 10th, 1999, Jones defeated Richard Everett in the 11th round. April 20th, 2000, He lost the IBF strap to Paul Engel. I was at that fight. He had Teddy Atlas in his corner. Now, all along, he always had Joey Ferriello, but Joey Ferriello had passed away. And Teddy Atlas and Joey Ferriello were pretty good friends. And he said, don't worry about it, Joey. I know you're not well. Something happens to you, I'll make sure that Junior Jones continues with his career. And he did as long as he possibly could. Now, Jones was having problems in that Paul Engel fight. And eventually, he dropped Paul Engel. And he went back to the corner and gave Teddy Atlas a high five. But he couldn't sustain it. And he would eventually wind up losing that fight with Paul Engel. And he was knocked out. Now, he would face Tom Boom Boom Johnson. He would defeat him. Also, Tracy Harris Patterson. Now, Tracy Harris Patterson was adopted by the youngest, at that time, heavyweight champion, Floyd Patterson, who was actually the youngest 21-year-old. Mike Tyson came around in 1986, to surpass that record at the age of 20. But Tracy Patterson would be adopted, him and his brother, by Floyd Patterson. And I watched his career. He was from New Paltz, New York. And he was doing very well with his career. But he would meet Junior Jones and lose to Junior Jones. He had two outstanding fights with Arturo Gatti. Arturo Gatti had taken the title away from Tracy Patterson and defeated him in a rematch. Tracy Harris Patterson, good fighter, just couldn't sustain his career. Junior Jones would also defeat Tom Boom Boom Johnson from Detroit, Michigan, who's the IBF featherweight champion. Poison Jones would defeat him. Now, Tom Johnson used to be in Gleason's gym many moments, and he was always looked at as a competitor for either Kevin Kelly, the Flushing Flash from Flushing, New York, or Poison Junior Jones, or the Harlem Butcher Jackson. Very good fighter was Tom Johnson. He would lose to Poison Junior Jones. Now, Marcos Antonio Barrera, they called him Tapia. That was his mother's name. He was also known as the baby-faced assassin. He was born January 17, 1974 in Mexico City, Mexico. He stood 5'6" and he had a 70-inch reach. He was a super fly, super bantamweight, featherweight, and super featherweight, as well as a lightweight fighter. He himself would win multiple championship belts. He had total fights of 75, 67 wins, 44 knockouts, 7 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, he would have 108 total amateur fights. He would win 104 and lose 4. He was a 5-time Mexican champion and the amateur career. November 22nd, 1989, he would have 43 consecutive winnings. He would win a WBA Super Bantamweight Championship by defeating Puerto Rican boxer Daniel Caripa. June 2nd, 1985, he would defeat future Frank Toledo. Now, Frank Toledo had a brother. They were both from Paterson, New Jersey. Very good fighters, the Toledo brothers. Frank Toledo would take the title away from Orlando Canizales. Now, Orlando Canizales had a brother by the name of Gaby Canizales. And Gaby Canizales would be knocked out clean. An opponent on the undercard of Marvelous Marvin Hagler and John the Beast Mugabe. He would knock an opponent out. And his opponent would hit his head so hard on the canvas that they would have to carry him out on a stretcher. Gaby Canizales was a very good fighter. He would be the brother of Orlando Canizales. And Orlando Canizales would lose a fight to Poison Junior Jones. And he would have various sparring matches with Marcos Antonio Barrera. But Frankie Toledo would defeat Canizales. for that title. And it would be in a knockout. February 6, 1996, Barrera would beat Kenny McKinley. Or he would face him, excuse me. And I tell you, that was some fight. Like I said, that was one of the greatest fights I've seen. And that was the first After Dark HBO special that they would have. But Marcos Antonio Barrera would face Poison Jr. Jones. November 22nd, 1996. And that was some fight. He would face him in Tampa, Florida for the WBO, and he would lose his Super Bantamweight Championship strap to Poison Jones. But he would have a rematch. April 18th, 1997. Junior Jones would win a unanimous 12-round decision in Las Vegas, Nevada, at the Hilton in Las Vegas. And these two men would always run into one another in fights, either in the audience or in the ring when they're being celebrated, or in the hallways or in the locker rooms. And they always give each other that stare, but they, from my understanding, they're pretty cool now. But I gotta tell you that these two men didn't like each other at one point in time. Barrera was going on to face Manny Pacquiao. He faced Marcos, his most competitive opponent will be Eric Morales, Enrique Sanchez, Jesse Bonavides, very good amateur fighter. He would face Kevin Kelly. Marcos Antonio Barrera would face Juan Manuel Marquez. He was some fighter. And that was some fight. I was at both of those fights with Junior Jones and Marcos Antonio Barrera. And I gotta tell you, Marcos Antonio Barrera was some tough fighter. He never quit. Had a little arrogance to him when he was a younger man. But he was undefeated on the night of November 22nd, 1996, when he faced Poison Jr. Jones. Thanks for reliving that fight with me, right here on the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. This is Scrapbook Boxing, stating all great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Marcos Antonio Barrera and Poison Jr. Jones. Salute to these very good fighters. Giving them both thanks for an outstanding fight. Salute to my subscribers.